we're going to look at rehanging or rehandling an axe. The reason I wanted to rehandle this axe is because this little pocket axe is a little bit small. This is more of a knock-around axe that I just kind of leave in my truck to use for general purposes. And I would love to have a bit more of a full-sized knock-around axe that I can just leave in the truck and get a little bit more functionality. Another reason that this axe just annoys the crap out of me is the grain orientation. If you take a look at this grain orientation, it's running perpendicular to the direction of the axe head, which means when you swing this axe, the grains are like my hand and it's much easier to break. If you look at the end, the grains are stacked like this, so it'd be like if you had a deck of cards this way, whereas you want your deck of cards to be parallel to the axis with which you swing your axe. I have a factory-made Grant's Force handle here, and if you look at this orientation, it's the exact opposite. The lines are stacked this way, so they run parallel to the swing of the axe. Alright, first step is going to be cutting off the old handle. We're going to want to cut right here so we can push what's left here out the top. Hard wood, obviously. Takes a minute to get my pilot curve. Alright, there we are. So we cut the handle off. Pretty straightforward. Something I think I'm going to do to help me get this plug out is drill some holes. And there we are. It is out. On to the next step. Alright, now that I've gotten this off and mostly cleared out in there, it's looking pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and kind of take this edge down, kind of chamfer this edge, so when I put this on the handle, it's not peeling the wood out. It's going to go as far down as it can. So I'm just going to go ahead, and it's a pretty crisp edge, you can kind of see. So I'm just going to take a regular old rat tail file and go ahead and take that edge down on the lower side. It's gonna take a while. Alrighty, got that nice and polished. You can see a full ring. So we're gonna go ahead and start looking back at the handle. Alrighty, so we're ready to start looking at my piece of wood for the handle, and I actually ordered this wood on the internet. I know, it sounds weird, it felt weird, ordering wood on the internet just doesn't seem right, but I'm really satisfied. It's a high quality piece of hickory. I'm going to try and hew a handle out of here. I went with a board. I couldn't really get a hickory log where I am. There's not many hardwoods around where I live, so like I said, I ordered a board on the internet. If I look at the bottom of this board, there's some nice grain orientation here at the bottom that's nice and parallel with the length of this board here. Nice and parallel in this direction. If you look down here at the bottom, it starts to curve off and you lose that parallel orientation. So I'm going to try and take my handle out of this section and then cut along here and chase this singular grain all the way down as I'm hewing out my handle. Now that I know where I want to pull the handle out of in this piece of wood, I can go ahead and start looking to trace out an actual handle pattern. And to do that, I'm going to use this old Grant's Force handle that has broken over the years. and because I really like the feel of a Grand 4 handle, and I like this length. This is about the 26-inch length I'm going for. I think 26 inches will balance out this 2-pound head pretty nicely. So that's pretty much my rough shape. Got good grain orientation, and when I'm tracing up here, I'm sure to leave it a bit fat. I don't want it to be too small for the eye of the head before I've even started shaping. That would be a disaster. That would be a waste of my wood. Another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bit more of a nub from my pinky than the Grand 4. Couple key points there for tracing it on out on this side. Make sure everything's lined up. I'm just going to mark a few key points. Alrighty, I'm going to put a center line down on this piece of wood. That will be important. There we go. That's pretty much the center of my board. Reline up our landmarks. Alrighty, now that I have my axe pattern traced onto the board, I'm going to go ahead and start hewing it out. That's the obvious next step. I'm going to be doing this with hand tools. I'm mostly going to be using an axe, a flat-edged hewing axe, hand saw, a couple different kinds of files here. This is a Ferrier's file. I think this is going to be very useful. And a Drawknife. This is actually a new Drawknife I just got. I'm not super familiar with it, but I'm excited to use it. So let's go ahead, start hewing this out. Now the work comes. So I might have lied. I'm actually going to use the circular saw for some of this because it's getting late and I'm running out of time. Just to cut out the rough pattern. I'm going to go ahead and zip this out real quick. We'll get back to you in just a moment. Alrighty, now that I've got it hewed out to a rough axe handle shape, I'm going to start getting into the fine polishing work and really start fitting it to hand. I've just got a little bit of chunkage left here to remove, but the palm swell is actually the last thing I'll finish up even after I mount the head, so that's okay. I like to have it pretty polished up at this stage, pretty smoothed out. You don't have to, but for me I like it so you can draw some dimensions and designs on this back end here. I've got pretty good grain orientation that I'm going to be chasing down. I'm going to chase that singular grain all the way through as I polish this out, so one grain runs the whole length of the handle. Okay, so now that we have our axe profile totally hewed out of the board that we started with, we're going to go ahead and start doing the actual fine shaping of the axe handle. I've got a little bit of wood to remove, but I really don't think this is going to be too bad. Maybe about 2 hours time, again using all hand tools. Alright, then I'm going to sit, pull up a chair, get comfortable, and I'm going to start working slowly but surely with the draw knife, and I'm going to fit the head first. I'm going to start on this side away from the palm swell first, because if I screw this part up, it doesn't make any sense hewing out the rest of this log, obviously. So we're going to go ahead and get this head fitted. This is a slower process. Take your time, make sure it's nice and snug. As the old adage goes, you can take wood off, but you can't put it back on. So, with that being said, let's get started. I'm really looking forward to it. Try to remember, this is true with all woodworking, all whittling, all of those kinds of skills. I try and remember soft energy is much better than hard energy. Try and relax your muscles as you're using them. I try and consciously loosen up my grip, relax the grip. Use nice, soft energy, controlled energy. You don't want to be muscling these things out. You'll screw something up that way, most importantly, but also you'll tire much quicker if you're fighting it and rigid the whole time. Relax, relax, relax. Alrighty, so I've been working this side down. It's looking pretty good, pretty flush with the line, so I'm going to go ahead and flip it, work on the other side, and continue fitting that head. Alrighty, so we're making progress fitting the head. It's taking a little bit longer than I thought. This is a pretty tiny little eye, so I'm having to remove a lot of wood. But it's pretty firmly on there. I've got a pretty tight fit, not so much at the top, but down here it's pretty flush all the way around. So now is a good time to do a little bit of a preemptive hang. And that fits it pretty tightly. Got a little bit of light coming through. Lovely. Now we have shiny imprints. You can see where it's a little shinier. That's where we need to remove the wood, obviously. Alrighty, so I've mostly gone down to the smaller grit file at this point. It's because I'm mostly making fine-tuned adjustments as I get closer and closer to actually fitting the axe head. It's getting further and further down there, especially when I strike it from the end. So I'm making smaller and smaller and smaller adjustments with the finer tooth file. And as I'm doing it, I'm paying very close attention to keeping it going true to the center line. I'm trying to be balanced, taking a similar amount of strokes off of either side, and just making sure I stay true and centered. I also don't want this section here it to taper too much through this section here. I want it to be pretty much continuous, so it's the same thickness down here as it is up here. That means the axe head will fit tightly throughout. Alrighty, so we're definitely getting close here. So this might be the final hanging. I want to make sure it's dead flush with the center of the handle. Everything lines up on axis for a well-hung head. But we shall see. Let's see how this goes. Hopefully this is the last one. 1, 2, 3, 4 for good measure. See, that ended up pretty good. Almost there. This may very well be the last pass with the file that it's going to get. I'm just taking off the last little mark where I saw the head biting into the wood. Almost there. I just wanted to get it this last 1/4 inch, so that's mainly where I'm going to focus. Alrighty, so the setup hasn't changed much. I'm just going to go ahead and move into shaping the upper half of this handle. Probably start just doing some light filing work on the other hand, and then up here get the swell, the knob, filed out a little bit as well. Just filing away. I'm hoping to move to the Drawknife a little bit further down. Alright, so I'm actually really into the final polishing stages of the upper helve here. So I'm going to step down to this finer grit file again and just really buff this wood out so it's not so rough from the rough file. But also do some polish, finishing touches, make sure everything's nice and symmetrical. You can really see the progress I've made. I'm just filing on. I haven't done much with the Drawknife. I guess it's been mostly the file. Probably slow going, but it's alright. It's coming out symmetrical the first go around. I don't have to go over the whole thing with the file after the Drawknife. Alright, so I've switched over to the other side of the handle. I'm going to just pretty much repeat the process, get covered in sawdust, and just keep hacking this thing out. I'm not going to do anything to the actual palm swell to the very end because I'm going to strike this with a hammer again when I actually hang the axe. So I'm going to leave that all carved up, I'm going to leave that uncarved because I don't want to mess up my work when I hit it with a hammer. Alrighty, flipping her on over, finishing out the handle. It's coming together nice. This has been a lot of fun. Just hammering it out. It feels good to hand. Again, I just think I need to shrink the whole thing up. Just not be afraid to take off wood. So I've moved on to kind of hand polishing with the fine file, but the rest is coming together. I'm almost ready to cut a kerf and hang her up. My hands are pretty tired though, so I'll probably do that tomorrow. But a little bit of hand polishing. As such, I'll call it a day and hang her up tomorrow, maybe the next day. Last bit of polishing it up. There's a couple little, like, dings, marks, cross hatches, and this fine tooth rasp file really cleans them out pretty nicely, especially when I keep it clean. And so I'm just going through last bit of polishing, and this handle is good to go. We'll cut the kerf and hang her up. Alrighty, now they're hanging. Hopefully the final one. And get it started. Hands as far down as we can go. Give it a blow. Make sure it's on their square. Once we've got that lined up, nice and solid. There we go. I think that's it. That's on there pretty tight. I don't know if you can see. Not much space in there. The spacing is, there's a bit of spacing in the top, but it's even all the way around, so that's good to see. So I think we're ready to proceed on to the next step. We're going to go ahead and cut out this kerf. Alright, so we can clearly see the mark that the head made when we hammered it on. We're going to want the kerf to come down the majority of the eye. So if the eye is approximately there, roughly, I'm going to want the kerf to come down most of the way. That's probably about right. So we're going to cut down all the way to that line. Ooh, this is going to take a while. And it's looking pretty solid, pretty down to the line on both sides. That's nice and flat along there. You want it to be nice and flat and parallel to go flat along and parallel with your wedge. So that's looking pretty good, pretty solid. I think it's time to start cutting out the wedge. Alrighty, so I have this block of wood, this offcut, and if you take a look at the grain, you can see it's most linear right here. If you can see that, that's got some nice straight grain on this bottom corner. So I'm going to try and cut a wedge out of this section right here. So I'll have the grain aligned going through the wedge itself, and it'll be nice and strong. Measure that length. It's a little bit, it's about 1/8 of an inch bigger than the top half of my axe. It's just a little bit wider. So it really takes up the eye, especially at the top half. Alright, that should be plenty. I want it to be pretty steep, I'm thinking. So I'm taking a pretty steep angle right here. Alright, let's go for it. I'm going to use that cheat and use the power saw again. There we go. There is our wedge. Takes some cleaning up. So when I check the thickness, I'm looking for general symmetry. So I want it to be the same thickness here as it is here. And I'll probably cut right along here so this sinks in nice and square at a 90 degree. Really just trying to measure things up at this point. I think I've chosen the front half of my wedge just because it's a smidge thicker on this side, so it's gonna squeeze a bit harder on the thinner front side of the axe eye. And I'm really just making some fine-tune adjustments. I think this will fit really nicely. Pound it in there. And we'll be good to go. Great grain orientation. I have a single grain that goes almost the whole way through. And I'm just rounding up the bottom side just a little bit more. Nice and flat, nice and 90 degree, because I want this to go really snug down in there. Just cleaning up the wedge a little bit. Also periodically checking to see how well it fits into the eye. Got a bit. Need to get it clear down there. I think everything fits together. Let's go ahead and gather our supplies. I'm going to go ahead and use waterproof wood glue to glue the wedge in. Some people don't bother gluing it. I like to glue it, especially if you're using it in wet weather. I think it just slobbering a bunch of glue in there gives me a little bit of extra peace of mind. But with that being said, let's gather the supplies and go outside to a flat surface where we're going to go ahead and hang this thing. I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to come together pretty smashing. Alrighty, so the first thing I'm going to do is slather a bunch of glue down in there. Fill the crack on up and let it dribble all the way down. Give it a little bit of encouragement as it dribbles all the way in there. I'm actually going to slather just a bit on either side. I like glue, as people will tell me. Alrighty, just like last time, put that on, sink it as far down as you can. Now I'm going to take the hammer and strike the back. But this is your final mounting, so give it a good hard couple good hard blows. I think it's time. Put one more layer. Make sure you got the front. Alrighty. Lots of glue in there. Already wedging it out. So now again, pound on the back side. I've got a bit of a ways to go before I'm at the line, but almost there. Alrighty, so it's in there. It looks pretty good. Got the wedge most of the way. Got a good glue squeeze out on each side. I managed to not get too much glue on my fresh wooden handle, and it's in there. It ain't going nowhere. And of course, the obligatory checks. Make sure she's right on. Beautiful. Now time to let the glue dry and we will finish up the palm swell while it's drying. Alrighty, so it's the next day and the glue is all dried up. I'm gonna go ahead and cut the top off right here along this line, leaving about, maybe a 1/4 inch, maybe a bit less. We're almost there. It's almost finished. I'm excited. It's come out really nicely so far. Light cut. Alright, so it came out pretty well. I've got decent mechanical advantage. It's splitting, it's squeezing outwards. Not quite as much as I would like, but it looks pretty good. Nice solid weld on the top. Looks like one uniform piece of wood. Again, it's nice and tight right down here at the bottom, all the way around the axe. Nice and tight there. And then again with the wedge at the top, nice and tight all the way around with the wedge. So that's a pretty good job, pretty good hang job. Next, we start sanding. Alrighty, I've got some 150 grit to start. Some final buffing. Make my palm swell nice. Make that grain pop. Because if you can see, that grain's getting nice. Alrighty, now that we've got our handle, I'll sand it out. It feels buttery smooth, nice to the hand. So we're gonna go do my favorite part, which is apply some linseed oil. Came up really nice. I'm really happy with this. So let's get to it. And because this is my first coat, I am going to apply a fair amount. The wood is thirsty for the oil. It just soaks it right in. Get it nice and tight up in there. Lots of oil for the wood, and it looks really nice. I'm going to go ahead and reapply this several times in the next hour, in the next day, in the next week, and in the next month. Here we go. Alright fellas, I think that is pretty much it. The finished axe. I think it turned out really nice. And I think that is going to last a good long while. This is probably going to be my go-to axe. Alrighty, so I was just using the axe a little bit to clear some of my yard trimmings, and it worked out really well. It came out really nicely. I'm really satisfied with it. It's really balanced, feels really nice in my hand, and I was able to get a single grain that runs the entirety of the handle. It does waver a little bit, and they're a little bit thicker in places than I would like, but overall it came out really nicely. I don't know if you can see down here. Sun's fouling it up a little bit, but some good grain orientation. Again, they're a bit thick. And that's the general principle. You want to select your grain orientation, so it's if you had a deck of cards laying on the side of your axe like that, and then just continue it all the way down, all the way through, chasing the one grain the whole time. That's really the only principle you gotta know. It's been a lot of fun. It really came together well. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for following along. I'll put a link to some useful tools down in the description in case you want to go ahead and try it at home. Thanks again. See you next time.